All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome into the Mark Rogers TV Kickoff show. This is Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Hopefully, we've got some new listeners and viewers today. I love the core base of viewers and fans that we've got, supporters that watch us on a regular basis. Of course, you know that I'm going to talk to you in the live chat and welcome your comments and your questions, but always looking for new viewers. So you got to love college football if you've come across my station and you're tuning into a channel that says Mark Rogers TV College Football. I would think that you're somewhat interested in the sport. So I welcome you in. Check out the channel, check out the videos, check out the live streams. We go live constantly. Last weekend, it was Thursday night analysis, Friday night analysis, several times throughout the day on Saturday after we did the big kickoff show on Saturday morning, but several times throughout the day on Saturday with instant analysis of the games, and Sunday night and Monday night. So we'll be back a number of times today to check out college football, give you instant analysis, and hear from you on the games as they unfold throughout the day on Saturday. All right. Like, comment, subscribe. You can't imagine how much that helps us when you like, comment, and subscribe. So just don't do it blindly, though. Of course, like or dislike. You can hit the unlike button. You can hit the dislike button. That's fine. The only thing I ask is if you disagree with me, if you disagree with the analysis, but you still think I'm delivering quality content, bringing on the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the industry, also providing a logical viewpoint on college football. It's going to be my take, my perspective, but it may not be yours. But if you figure, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about, he watches the game, he studies the game, he knows his history of the game, he understands the workings of college football, he knows what's going on, he's on top of it. I don't agree with what he has to say here, but I'm going to click the like button. Helps us a ton. We also want your comments, your questions, your suggestions about the channel, suggestions about what needs to be changed about college football, suggestions about the games, your predictions, your outlook, your rankings, your ratings. What do you have to say about college football? This is the voice of college football. My voice. Like to hear your voice as well. And we bring on, again, the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the nation. So give us your outlook on college football. Leave those in the comment section as well. All right. The audio, if that's better for you, you're out and about running errands, you're working out, you're doing your chores around the house, whatever it is. If the audio works better for you, go to Google Play, Podbean, iTunes, and Stitcher. Just search Mark Rogers TV. You will find the podcast right there. It is a duplication for the most part, not able to get to all of them. So the audio is a bit secondary to the video right now, but basically a duplication of the content that we provide here on YouTube as well. Like our Facebook page. You don't have to love us, but you gotta like us. And you really don't have to like us. But if you watch, I would like for you to like us on Facebook. Again, just search Mark Rogers TV. Our previews this week, we went in depth on Georgia, South Carolina Thursday night. Check that out. Before you check out the game at 3:30, know the players involved, know the strategies, know the approach of the teams. Georgia, South Carolina. Check that out. USC, Stanford, we did the same thing. Had many requests for more USC coverage. We delivered this week with Inside USC and also Reign of Troy jumping on board USC Stanford. We hit it from both sides as we did, yes, again, Georgia, South Carolina, Iowa, Iowa State, a big game on Fox later today. Florida, Kentucky, we hit that with Kevin McGuffey from Last Word on College Football. Also took a look back at Florida State, Virginia Tech with a look forward to see what does Willie Taggart need to do to fix the Seminoles football team, especially the offense, and Virginia Tech. Are they that good? We had Mike McDaniel on earlier this week talking Virginia Tech. So while the Hokies have a bit of a layoff, bit of a vacation, 3 scrimmages in a row against the likes of William and Mary, Old Dominion, and East Carolina over the next 3 weeks. Let's see if the Hokies really are going to be that good the rest of the season. Mike McDaniel. My picks are out, so I may review some of those today during the kickoff, but I sent those out late last night. My predictions, 12-7 against the spread last week. I'm happy with that. Hopefully we can continue that trend, as 60% against the spread is the goal. 60% against the spread. Not always able to hit that. You people that are into betting know that if you can get to close to 53% against the spread in Vegas, against the Vegas line, which pays about 90 to 91% on the dollar. So if you throw $100 at a game and you're betting the point spread, typically it's right about 91% the return on your winnings, that you need to hit about 53% to start winning money. I was around 61, 62% week one against the spread at 12-7. I'm not a professional, just giving you my outlook on college football. My predictions, 19-4 straight up. All right. Alonzo 1219 coming on the board here at Mark Rogers TV, coming online here in just a few minutes. Alonzo 1219 has much to say about Miami football, of course, and many of you care deeply about Miami football, and we will talk Miami football with Zoe at 10:10. So it looks like we're coming up on that in just a few minutes. At 10:30, Jason Ray of Last Word on College Football to talk Oklahoma, with the Sooners hosting UCLA, and Oklahoma looking mighty impressive against the team that we thought might be one of the class, maybe not the class, but at the top upper echelon of the group of five coming into this season. Lane Kiffin, Devin Singletary, and FAU. But Oklahoma completely wasted them, annihilated them last week. I am intrigued by Chip Kelly's coaching ability. I do not expect Chip Kelly and UCLA to go from what we saw last week with a freshman quarterback in play and turn that completely around and go to Norman and pull off a stunning upset as a 30-point underdog. But what do great coaches in college football, what are they able to do? Well, they're able to hit this from a number of angles in regards to their team's mental makeup and psychology to turn around what was assumed to be a win, probably by some of them, against Cincinnati, and losing at the Rose Bowl against the Bearcats, who were 4-8 last year, to turn that around into positive energy, positive momentum, a positive outlook, and anger, a sense of pride. Let's get back. Let's show the nation after this embarrassment that we can show up at a big game when we are completely counted out. That's what the great coaches are able to do. From the psychology standpoint, turn the team around, turn a negative into a big positive. They're also able to game plan. And even if the other team has 18 advantages over their 2 mismatch advantages, well, they take advantage of the 2 mismatches. And of course, there's a really good coach on the other side. In this case, it's Lincoln Riley and his coaching staff scheming as well. So it's not all on Chip Kelly, but at the same time, Chip Kelly will show us something possibly today, whether his team is ready to play, they fight to the end, and he puts in a wrinkle or two for Oklahoma that we may not have seen last week against Cincinnati in a disappointing 26-17 loss in which they were up 10-0. Probably don't have the time right now with a couple guests on board, but I'm going to take you through my viewing schedule, and I haven't worked that out right now, but I'll look at the schedule and let you know what I'm going to be tracking. And that typically changes throughout the day, because if one game becomes a blowout that I thought was going to be a really good game and something else takes precedence because it's 17-14 in the fourth quarter, well, I'm going to mix that up. But at the same time, I'll give you my plan throughout the day of what I'm going to watch to provide instant analysis. Last Saturday, that meant after the Auburn-Washington game, we kind of caught that together, the last few minutes of Washington and Auburn, and I got a favorable response from everyone of us watching the last 3 or 4 minutes of Auburn-Washington together, and at the same time flipping back and forth because Penn State was on the brink and went to overtime against Appalachian State. So we watched those games together, then provided instant analysis and took your calls, and we will take your calls for the next hour and a half here as well. 860-325-3687. 860-325-3687. The only time I won't be taking calls is when we have a guest on. And right now, the guest lineup is Alonzo 1219 at 10:10. And then Jason Ray of college, last word on college football at 10:30. All right. We will analyze, of course, today's games. We had one top 25 game over the weekend already, Friday night. They got started 2 hours late because of all the lightning in the area, but finally got on the field, and it was mighty wet, slippery, and the ball couldn't be handled kind of strangely by TCU in the first quarter. Then after that, they did fine, and it was SMU that started to lose track of the football and lose the handle. So TCU was sloppy in the first quarter, got better. It was still a halftime score 14-12. I did take some notes on the game, but did not produce a post-game analysis on that one. TCU ran away with it as expected in the second half, 42-12, but they were down 7-0. They were only up 14-12 at half. I was impressed with SMU taking the ball down the field the last 90 seconds of the first half, converting a 4th and 1 at the 50. So it's 14-9. They could punt the ball and be safe going in down 5 at halftime. But when you're SMU and you're a 3-4 touchdown underdog and playing a far superior football team, you got to take advantage of field position in a short yardage situation. They did that. They even, with 6 seconds left in the half, did something that you wouldn't see most coaches doing. Sonny Dykes said, we're going to run a play, throw the quick out, bam, hit it for 5 yards, give our field goal kicker a better position on the field, better chance. And it took 3 seconds. They had 3 seconds left. They kicked a field goal. All for naught. Just some of the intricacies of SMU making some positive steps after an embarrassing loss in week 1 as they kept it close against TCU for much of the game. They had a shot to take the lead in the third quarter. Then it all caved in, and TCU took over. Sean Robinson did throw his first interception of his career in 71 pass attempts. And it was a bad decision, bad throw, but one pick in this game against SMU as TCU prepares for Ohio State, and they won this one over SMU 42-12. I will release my top 25 after all the games are in the books. So that might be late tonight. Most likely that's going to be sometime on Sunday. My top 25, the Mark Rogers TV voice of college football, the top 25 that makes sense. It just seemed common sense for me to call it the top 25 that makes sense because it actually makes sense based on the results on the field and based on logic. You will not see Michigan at 7-2 with a loss to Michigan State, who's 8-1, still be ranked ahead of Michigan State. Those are the type of things that I've seen for years and years and years and years and years. But I finally took action on it last year. And what I did with the release of the top 25 every Sunday was say, that's crazy. That makes no sense. There's about 5 things in this top 25 between the AP and the Coaches Bowl that don't make sense, either based on results on the field or based on what they had the previous week. So they've already done this, and I didn't even really look at last week's top 25. I just thought, okay, they're releasing it late this year. It's going to be on Tuesday instead of on Sunday. So I'll get my top 25 out there. But even from week 0 to week 1, for example, without playing a game or with playing the one game that we saw last week with Ohio State dominating Oregon State, no big deal. Wisconsin dominating Western Kentucky, no big deal. 77-31. Buckeyes showed some leaks on defense, but still 77-31. And then Wisconsin blows out Western Kentucky 34-3. What does the AP poll do? They, the week before, said Wisconsin's the 4th best team in the country and Ohio State's number 5. And then the next week, based on those results, Ohio State flips to 4, Wisconsin drops to 5. So we're awaiting Alonzo 1219. Hopefully he will be jumping on the line with us. I will check my text messages just to make sure here. Meanwhile, if you guys want to call me, it's 860-325-3687. I will put that number in the live chat. So again, we've got Alonzo 1219 coming on, supposed to be at 10:10. And did you get the link. All right, Alonso1219 talking Miami. Then right after him, Jason Ray, last word on college football. And I've got my note going out on Twitter to all my contributors. So if anybody wants to stop by that's a regular guest on here or has a platform, a college football platform, we want professionals on here, in addition to your phone calls that want to talk their team, their game today. But 860-325-3687. Let me check out the live chat and see what you guys are talking about today and what's on your mind. The Mac went to sleep. Here we go. Let's see what who's on the line, what you guys are talking about. I would consider watching game day with you guys. Obviously, that is the center of the college football universe on Saturday morning. That is something that I grew up as a college football fan. Well, I'm a little older than that. I didn't grow up watching college game day. That was a thing of the 90s. So in my 20s, I watched college game day. Loyally, religiously watched college game day. And then I would say sometime maybe about 15 or 20 years ago, 15 years ago, probably something in that range, it kind of drifted off of my radar. I much more became just engulfed in watching the games. And you get the family together, you've got the wife, you've got the kids, and some of these things have to go. And I have never returned to college game day. It's still a quality show. It's probably even better than it was 20 years ago or 15 years ago. I just haven't found time for it. And usually they tell me a lot of stuff that I already know. But it's a great show. You guys are probably watching it right now. I would watch it with you. One caveat. I cannot really critique what's going on ESPN. That is just a deal that we have. And I'm not able to critique ESPN. Hey, Zo, we're on live here.
Yeah, I got the link. I'll be there.
Okay.
I think I'm about.
All right. Thank you, sir. Okay. We got somebody at 10:30, so it'll have to be quick. But when you're able to jump on, thanks, man.
So how long the person 10:30 gonna be on?
Probably 15 or 20, something like that.
Mark.
All right, so. How long about 15 or 20. I'm on live right now. So if you want to come on now or after that, either one's good with me.
I'll come on after that. So
okay. All right. That sounds good. We'll see you.
Okay.
Bye. All right. Got Jason Ray at 10:10. We've got or at 10:30. Alonzo at 10. You heard it right there. 10:45. But that's why I don't watch. It's not why I don't watch college game day. I just don't think of it. It's just not on my radar. College game day. Basically, I'm staying up late Saturday night, depending on what's going on elsewhere in my life. With whom? Staying up late on Saturday night, depending on my current situation. Staying up late Saturday night, get up late on or Friday night, then Saturday morning. Getting up late. College game day has not been on my radar for about 15 years. And as you guys know, I was cutting my predictions last night at 3:45 in the morning. So usually, late night Friday, again, with a family and kids, college game day has not been something that's crossed my mind for years and years and years and years. You guys probably have it on right now, and maybe I'll get into it as well. Unfortunately, because of my situation, for as much as I would love to comment on college game day and any other ESPN property or comments made from ESPN, I would have much to say. I cannot. And I think most of you guys understand why. And if you don't, you can ask. All right, let's go to the live chat. We're 10 minutes away from Jason Ray from Last Word on College Football to talk Oklahoma. I'm going to check out the live chat. I'm going to give you my viewing schedule for the day, and therefore when you can expect us to jump on the line for some instant analysis. That's basically going to be most likely after the noon game, so about 3:15 or so before that 3:30 kickoff. We'll jump on here for a few minutes, see what you guys have to say about the noon games. I will have much to say, I'm sure, about the games at noon. We'll check out 3:30, get back on the line around 7:30 to check out your comments, your questions, your aggravations about the football games at noon and 3:30, and we'll be back on after the primetime games, maybe the late night games as well with instant analysis. All right. On the live chat, Gables Kane. Always a good morning to all of you. Prince is on the line. Gables Kane, I actually got a notification on time. I don't know what to tell you there. I apologize if you don't get your notifications on time. I typically, like last night, I sent it out late so you guys would have it first thing in the morning. I don't want to send it out too far in advance. Like I've got my live stream schedule that you can check out on my YouTube banner. If you look at the YouTube front page, my front page, you see the live stream schedule. Now I add to that, so I don't have anything listed, for example, on Friday, but I typically jump on it sometime or multiple times on Friday. So those are the dates that I've committed to for the most part, but I'm going to typically do more live streams than what I have posted on the banner, but I don't want to send those out like 2 days in advance or a day in advance. I typically try to send those out hours in advance so you guys can plan ahead a bit. All right, Zoom play. Are you satisfied with a TCU performance last night? And asking me what I thought of the TCU performance last night. I got to say, I got rather bored with the situation fairly quickly into the third quarter and wasn't completely locked in. I jumped off the line here because I wanted to see the game, and a few other things diverted my attention. But I was preparing for some other things, working on my business, and a few other things. I was watching the game. I started taking notes, and I thought, who's going to be watching me at 2:00 in the morning when this game's over to analyze the 42-12 blowout? So I started to take notes. It's the kind of performance we would expect. 2-hour delay, an inferior foe. The TCU didn't necessarily come out ready, made some mistakes, and SMU played a really good first half, especially offensively. The first few drives, especially that first drive, they broke the big run. They went up 7-0. TCU made a couple mistakes. They could have widened the gap in the first half, but they had a fumble inside the red zone. And TCU played remarkably well for them on defense for close to 3 quarters. We went into the third quarter at 14-12, and as I mentioned off the top, they had that nice drive at the end of the first half to show me something when it started to slip away from them. They were lucky on the safety, and TCU was lucky that it wasn't a touchdown. If that ball would have stayed in play, then SMU would have had the ball inside the 5, or the ball went into the end zone. They could have recovered for a touchdown, but it kicked off the SMU player who was trying to get it. He kicked it, it hit off his knee, and then it just shot through the end zone for a safety. Safeties are some of my favorite plays in football, but that was completely created by the TCU punter dropping the snap. The ball was wet. He dropped the snap. He probably won't drop another snap this year, but he dropped a snap with a wet ball, and it was a little high. And SMU was gifted some points there. That also gives a possession to SMU in good field position, in which they returned it to about the 45. Didn't get points out of that, but it kills the clock and it allows SMU to stay in the game longer. But TCU is too quick in space and started to break plays on SMU. But I wasn't overly impressed with TCU. But I take this as a game that there were conditions surrounding the start of play. They don't start until 10 o'clock at night. And there you go. So I'm not going to take too much from that performance from TCU. We will find out so much about TCU and Ohio State next Saturday night. Gables Kane, following Mark during the season and throughout game day, adds so much to the whole college football experience. Now, there, I should put that on a banner. I thought that was a lot of fun last weekend. It was a bit instead of just enjoying the games, having to broadcast during the games was a bit much. But overall, a fun experience, and you guys made it worthwhile to get on here Thursday night, Friday night, multiple times on Saturday while the games were going on, trying to hit those gaps in play to analyze what we just saw and then preview quickly the next game. But of course, games are constantly going, so you can't completely hit the gaps. But hitting up the instant analysis a number of times on Saturday, and then, of course, Sunday night, Monday night. So I appreciate that. Gables Kane with a tremendous promotional announcement there. Following Mark during the season and throughout game day adds so much to the whole college football experience. That's going to be posted on Twitter. All right. Didn't make all the way through SMU, so TCU. Who won? 42-12. Zoom play. I know you're high on TCU and can't wait for next week's game. Mitch Fair. This is the first time, Mitch, I have seen your name listed in the live chat or on any comment. So I appreciate you joining Mark Rogers TV. So as I ask everyone the first time I see your name, if you care to comment, who do you root for and how long have you been watching? All right. Iowa State is beating Iowa. Mark, do you think Iowa State can beat Iowa? Of course they can beat Iowa. These teams are... This is a dead even deal. I did my predictions. They were posted late last night. I picked Iowa hesitantly. I picked Iowa. I think Iowa State's offense is more functional than what we know of Iowa's offense right now. Nathan Stanley's a great downfield thrower. Great, a bit of an overstatement. Very good downfield thrower. He's strong enough. He's got the arm strength downfield, but was not as efficient as he needed to be last year at 56%, a bit scattershot downfield. The Iowa receivers don't scare anyone, led by Nick Easley. But that big tight end, Noah Fant, is one of the best in the business. Akram Wadley is going to be missed, even though the Iowa running game with him and James Butler wasn't as effective as you would have thought in terms of the advanced metrics last year. So it's a hit or miss Iowa offense. And I think Iowa State is much more potentially explosive on offense based on what we saw of Kyle Kemp's efficiency last year. 15 touchdowns, 3 picks. And of course, David Montgomery. So Iowa State has what Iowa had last year in Akram Wadley. And for the past few years, they have David Montgomery. So he can explode at any time. And Iowa's linebackers are all new special teams players from last year. And the defensive front at Iowa is exceptional. So basically, if they were playing in Ames, I would have picked the Cyclones. But I'm picking the Hawkeyes at home, and that's not typically the way I look at it. I know a lot of people put home road split into it and emphasize that considerably. It's a slight advantage for most teams. If this was a true night game, then it would be a larger advantage for Iowa. It's just one of those things. The place would really, really, really be amped. But I like Iowa to pull out the victory, but in a razor-tight fashion, Mitch. To the point, Mitch, that I picked Iowa State with the points. With the 4 points, I will take the Cyclones. All right, we've got Oklahoma coming off an impressive showing against FAU, taking on UCLA as a 30-point favorite, based on, of course, the Oklahoma prowess and what we failed to see out of Chip Kelly's club in surprisingly losing to UCLA or to Cincinnati last week, 26-17. We got Jason Ray on the line from Last Word on College Football. Jason, how you doing today? Oh, can't hear you, Jason. If you can check out your mic. There we go.
Okay. Good. Sorry about that, Mark. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing just fine. How are you?
Good. Just getting ready for week 2, ready to get cranked up.
Absolutely. We are. So I've heard all sorts of comments from Oklahoma people, including Lincoln Riley, about the performance of Kyler Murray against FAU. and also even comparisons between he and Baker Mayfield, which are a bit jumping the gun. But I heard some comparisons, and basically I heard all favorable comparisons, and then on top of that, that Kyler Murray's more dynamic as an athlete. What would be your assessment of what you saw last week?
Yeah, he did really, he played really well. He played a little bit less than a half. I think Austin Kendall came in the last possession of the first half. 9 out of 12, 200 yards, a couple of touchdowns. And, he looked the part, right? I think one of the things from an Oklahoma fan, just kind of on the outside looking in, the thing that he liked was that he was very patient in the pocket. A lot of times he would go through his progressions. I think one of the knocks on him, at least previously at A&M, then early in fall camp, was that he was quick to scramble. He would go through one, maybe two reads. If it wasn't there, he'd quick to pull it and run. I think he was you could see he was very patient in a few instances where he had to go through, his number 3, number 4 guy. He looked the part. He looked, like he looked like he was a seasoned quarterback in running the system. So he played well. I think he didn't run a lot. He only had a couple of carries. He had one kind of highlight reel scramble where he dodged the Florida Atlantic traffic a little bit and gained. I think it was only about a 7 or 8 yard gain. I think he ran about 30, 35 yards to get those 7 to 8 yards. So all signs point towards a very, very successful first game. But me personally, let's pump the brakes a little bit on the Baker comparison. He played really well for his first game. But one of the things we have to remember is that Baker was a 3-year starter, Heisman Trophy winner, first round number 1 draft pick. So while it was a good start, I think let's see how he plays on the road. Let's see when he gets in a bad position. Third and 15, 3rd and 17. How does he do in those types of scenarios where where he's got a little adversity facing him? So I think, like I said, all things count towards a very successful opening start. But let's see how that goes as the season goes on.
Okay, before we dive into the Bruins, college football always has a personnel churn more than any other sport, where we need to see droves of players make an impact on the field and may have some key assignments, whether they start or just come in on certain packages that we don't know anything about. We've heard about them. We saw them recruited and signed. Maybe we didn't hear about them for 2 years because they redshirted. Then they basically played a little special teams as a redshirt freshman, that type of situation. Or maybe it's a hot shot, 4 or 5 star that might get pressed into duty and or just have the overwhelming talent to show up the first couple games of their freshman season and play well. Any of those situations in which you got to see some players on offense and defense that you didn't know a whole lot about, maybe you read about them, but we haven't seen yet, and you got to see them show out?
Yeah, it really manifested itself a lot on the defensive side of the ball. I think kind of the mode of the season early on was cautiously optimistic. I think through camp, we've heard a lot of stories around how much improved this defense is going to be, and I think a lot of Oklahoma fans and media alike were, let's wait and see. We've heard this for numerous years, but you kind of saw it a little bit on the field. They played very well. I think in the first 9 Florida Atlantic possessions, I believe there was 6 punts, 2 4.5. They went out on downs, and then 1 possession into the half. So part of that, there was a few new faces on the defensive side, notably the big the secondary rookie Brendan Riley Hiles was was a 4-star commit out of IMG. I think it was kind of a foregone conclusion that he was going to make a big difference on the defense. And that's one of the things that Mike Stussy can say through fall, that when he's not on the field, we see a considerable difference. So that's high praise for a true freshman coming in, that he's at that level, and I think all signs have pointed to him being a leader. You hear about him from the recruiting circles. Everybody knows Buki, whether or not it was last year's recruiting class or this year, the 2019 class. He is very well known in the recruiting circles, and just around the country. So, from a secondary position, I think he's one of those that you will continue to see and hear about. And then among the defensive line, Ryan Perkins, he's a true freshman out of St. Louis. He wasn't in the starting lineup, but he did play starter minutes against Florida Atlantic, so he played a lot as well. He was very disruptive in the backfield on the defensive line. Offensively, not a lot of new faces. They're pretty established. Kyler's not a freshman, but he's new in the lineup. One area that he's going to be a name that people know. He's a walk-on, Drake Stoops, Bob Stoops' son. He did play a little bit. He will be more of a possession receiver. Really good route runner. Not great speed. He had offers from Iowa, among others, and he chose to walk on at Oklahoma. He's very quick to tell you he's one of those that he definitely wants to make a name for himself. Doesn't want to rely on the Stoops name. So he's one. I think Riley will kind of play that out the first few games of the year. With the new redshirt rule in the 4 games, see if he's going to be one of those people that can help them, through the conference season and when they get to the meat of the schedule. But he's one of those that I would look to see that would contribute on the offensive side of the ball.
I actually think, Jason, I tuned into the game when Stoops made his first catch, and of course there was a roar from the crowd. He's instantly a crowd favorite.
Oh, absolutely, he will be. And I think he's Stoops is obviously very, very well regarded. So yeah, he's going to be a crowd favorite. He's going to he's kind of like the backup quarterback, right? Everybody loves the backup quarterback. He's always the most popular player on the team. But yeah, he will be a fan favorite as long as he keeps producing, for sure.
Well, there's a couple things working, I think, there. Obviously, the lineage and the great work that Bob Stoops did there. He's always going to be a legend. Anytime you win a national championship and then dominate the conference for as long as he did, he's a legend. So there's the lineage there. And then on top of that, college football fans, I think in particular, are drawn to the guy who doesn't look like he belongs on the field, but he's able to, based on film study and working out and just doing all the right things and his diligence and his smarts and his technique, he's able to stay on the field and contribute, even though he doesn't belong with the freakish athletes that are out there. And he's one of those guys. Right, Jason. Jason Ray, we got Jason Ray from Last Word on College Football to talk Oklahoma at UCLA. So, of course, when the contracts were signed, this was supposed to be the non-conference game of Oklahoma's schedule. And then during the offseason, based on UCLA being somewhat mundane, despite the Chip Kelly cachet factor, FAU coming in, some of us thought, this might be a little bit interesting. And it quickly was not interesting, as Oklahoma proved far superior. Now we've got a UCLA team that we knew wasn't going to be great, but we thought they were going to be top 40 good, something in that range. And they lose to Cincinnati at home after taking a 10-0 lead, and they are really limping in. But we know from looking at their recruiting rankings that Chip Kelly's got a roster of top 15 to 25 talent. So if he's able to change the psyche and pick out some mismatches and find something this week, maybe they've got a fighting chance of making it a game. But obviously the perspective on the enormity of this matchup has changed considerably.
Yeah, it definitely has. Me and Tony Syracuse, who's one of our senior editors for Last Word on College Football, as well, and a big UCLA supporter. We talked earlier this week, and just to see that the betting line and the spread is at 31 points, and it was just it's a big number. I mean, it's pretty astronomical. I mean, kind of my side was maybe the odds makers are overreacting a bit. Both on the positive side for Oklahoma and maybe on the negative side for UCLA. So, coming into this game, I think one of the big things Oklahoma has to guard against is complacency and kind of reading their own press clippings. I mean, I remember last year, early in the year, with the big Oklahoma had the big victory over Ohio State in Columbus, and I think the next game they played Tulane, very uninspired defensive performance. I think Tulane actually ran up and down the field the first 4 possessions. Oklahoma settled down and won comfortably, but then on the heels of that, they traveled to Baylor and they escaped Baylor. We knew what kind of season Baylor had. And then obviously they followed that up with a home loss to Iowa State. So I think complacency is something that they need to guard against. UCLA, they are, even though they did struggle a bit last week against Cincinnati, they're still a Power 5 team. They got great athletes on that team as well. One player immediately that jumps off the page, Kazmir Allen. I think he had five carries for over 100 yards and a score very similar to Rodney Anderson's stats after Saturday. Kind of almost identical, 5 carries for around 100 yards and a couple of scores. So yeah, I think what the Sooners really will have to guard against is just that complacency, patting themselves on the back, and going out and preparing like it's a top-notch opponent.
All right, so Oklahoma's passed the first test in flying colors and just romping from the get-go. FAU, they've got UCLA, which seems to be a mismatch right now, coming in as a 30-point underdog. And you mentioned the 31-point line. I've got it at 30, whatever it is. If Oklahoma won this game, if we were told right now that they won this game 48-17, nobody would be shocked by that, that Oklahoma won 48-17. So they're certainly capable of winning the game by 31 points. It's just that for the line to be that much, which usually the line's a little bit more skewed to the meaning if they played 10 times, I doubt if Oklahoma could maintain a 31-point advantage every game against the UCLA. But just to see that line is rather shocking, despite the Bruins' issues last week and Oklahoma looking like the best team in the country. So we expect Oklahoma to continue to romp and have a big win today against UCLA. Jason Ray joining us from Last Word on College Football to break down Oklahoma, UCLA, with the Sooners preparing for their Big 12 foes coming up in just a couple weeks. All right, Jason, we appreciate you stopping by, helping our kickoff show launch in fine fashion here today.
All right, thanks for having me on, Mark. Appreciate it.
That's Jason Ray from Last Word on College Football, so you can join him right there with the rest of the crew. Mike Laval, Tony Siracusa, and Kevin McGuffey as well, who joined us last night to talk Kentucky football with the Wildcats trying to break that losing streak to Florida. 31 straight. That's insane to me. I enjoyed seeing the highlights last night on ESPN2 of the Kentucky-Florida game from 1986. 10-3. And again, Ricky Nattiel fumbled the ball on the last drive for Florida that ended the game. Ricky Nattiel. Does anyone remember what he did in the NFL? Ricky Nattiel. All right, I'm going to jump on the schedule. I'm going to look at today's schedule, let you know what I'm going to be looking at, what my viewing schedule looks like, unless things change, of course. If there are blowouts and other games turn out to be interesting, then it changes in the moment. But this is my strategy for today. And, of course, check out my predictions video. I am not a pro, but 12-7 against the spread last week ain't too bad. So today's schedule, I know what game I'm watching right out of the gate. So I've got my eye on Mississippi State, Kansas State. That's an ESPN game at noon Eastern time. That has to be my game of focus first and foremost. Now, again, if it's 28-3 Mississippi State at halftime, then I go elsewhere. But I'll probably have 3 screens on, and it's going to be Mississippi State, Kansas State. 3 screens plus a DVR going starting at noon. Mississippi State, Kansas State, that's my game right there. Check out my predictions video on what my take is there. But ever since they signed this contract, I thought, okay, Kansas State, aside from the Auburn game that they played, and they did play Stanford 2 years ago in Palo Alto, but generally Kansas State plays nobody non-conference. Typically Mississippi State plays nobody non-conference. Finally, a quality program in the Big 12 and the SEC get together for a home and home. Other than that, can Western Michigan hang with Michigan for a while? I'll keep my eye on that at noon. We also at noon have Arizona, Houston. That's an ABC or ESPN2 game, depending on where you are in the country. Duke, Northwestern, Georgia Tech, South Florida. Those are all noon games. And so you've got 3 games that are all decent games. They're not going to wow you. It's not Wisconsin and Penn State playing at noon, but it's Duke Northwestern, Arizona at Houston, and South Florida hosting Georgia Tech. So in my world, those 3 games are all about equal importance. So I will select one as my secondary game and be locked in on that. Well, I'm going to be locked in on Mississippi State, Kansas State, but that's going to be my second game. And then the other 2 are going to be right there. So it's going to depend on which is the most intriguing game as they unfold. But Arizona, Houston, Duke, Northwestern, and Georgia Tech, South Florida, those interesting games for me. Then at 1 o'clock, just because of the name brands of the 2 schools, Oklahoma, UCLA. Now, if for some reason at 1 o'clock, these other games have gotten out of hand, which I would doubt all 4 have at that point, but 1 o'clock, I'm going to have to start to give some attention to Oklahoma, UCLA, kind of monitor that. And if UCLA is somewhat able to stay close, then that's going to move onto my radar very quickly. But otherwise, if it's 28-0 Oklahoma after the first quarter, similar to FAU last week, which Oklahoma FAU was on my radar, I thought, okay, this could be interesting, but it quickly was gone. I never watched it, didn't see anything, saw a couple highlights, switched to it a few times, and saw a couple plays, and that was it. All right. Then we've got nothing. Then 3:30, ESPN2 is chosen to play Alabama, Arkansas State. Obviously, the 3:30 game is South Carolina, Georgia. That is the game to watch at 3:30. So I will be locked in on South Carolina and Georgia. Of course, I'm going to have an eye on my secondary game, Nebraska, Colorado. To me, would be the most intriguing of the rest of it. Ohio State, one of the best teams in the country, plays Rutgers. Probably won't be a game. The Buckeyes have outscored Rutgers 114-0 the last 2 years. But Nebraska, Colorado intrigues me, but Georgia, South Carolina, the most important game of the day outside of USC, Stanford. So conference game, division game especially. All right. So that's my 3:30 setup. But then at 5 o'clock, Iowa, Iowa State. So if Georgia most likely jumps out against South Carolina, and that's not a game at halftime, then I really give attention to Iowa, Iowa State. But otherwise, if Georgia, South Carolina, Nebraska, Colorado are still playing some good football and it's competitive, then I just put Iowa, Iowa State on the radar and catch up with that probably at halftime, with Iowa, Iowa State kicking off at 5 o'clock Eastern time on Fox. All right. Then Clemson, Texas A&M come into play at 7 o'clock. Texas A&M, Clemson, just the narrative of Jimbo and Dabo getting back together. Game at Kyle Field. I don't expect Texas A&M to take this to the wire. I think Clemson will pull away in the second half, but could be an interesting game for a half. But if Iowa, Iowa State's close 2 hours into the game, I'm watching that game all the way through. And Texas A&M Clemson comes secondary. And then if it's close, and then I just repeat the cycle. Basically, I stay with the close games, the good games that are close, that important close games. And then the next one kicks off. It's on my radar. And then the first game ends, and then I kick into the second game. So after the noon games, once the 3:30 games start, unless it's a monumental game, then I'm watching a lot of second halves of games. All right. Really nothing else here. Kind of a possibly interesting game. Could be Wyoming at Columbia to take on Mizzou. That's a 7 o'clock game on ESPNU. I don't plan on seeing much of that. But if Texas A&M and Clemson gets out of hand early, then that could be an option. All right, we'll take you through the rest of the schedule a little bit later, but we got Lonzo1219 on the line. So, can you hear me?
I can hear you. What's going on, Mark? It might be a little difficult. I'm good. It might be a little difficult today because I'm running off my hotspot because I don't trust these hotel Wi-Fi. So my camera might not be as clear today. I don't know if I'm going to be lagging or not, but everything good. Everything good.
How was the big trip?
It was good. It's a good trip. I enjoyed myself so far. Pretty good trip. It's not as long a drive as people think it is. So it's a long drive. It's a long drive, but I guess you do it so much you kind of get used to it.
Yeah, it's one of those deals. I drive back to the homeland a couple times a year. It's about 8 hours, but you know what you can expect. You know what the deal is, so you know how long it's going to take you. So, what time's the game?
At 6.
As you can
Game's
expect,
at 6 tonight.
Not necessarily on my radar this week against Savannah State. It's
not on nobody's radar. I'm coming because, like I tell Hurricane fans, and especially Hurricane video makers, these are games. You have to make games. You have to support the team. I say this all the time. I know you hear it on my channel a lot. If you do Miami Hurricane videos and you don't go to games, then I kind of don't respect you as much, because it's like you have to see the atmosphere. You have to see the atmosphere. You have to understand what it's really like. The tailgating at Miami games are different than anybody's in the country. It's just crazy. So many people, so many different nationalities of people, different food, everybody having all kind of fun. It's music blasting. It's just different, and you have to be there to understand it. So that's another reason why I do this. You know what I'm saying?
So with your channel this week, the talk out there from the people that watch you, considering what happened on Sunday night, what's the vibe like? What are people saying?
Actually, all year long on me has been last 2 years. Alonzo, stop being so negative on Rick. Alonzo, stop being so negative on Rick. And then after this game, if you go to the comment section, Alonzo, you've been right. So I just say I watched him coach so often, and because I live in South Carolina, not from there, but I live there. So, Georgia, South Carolina play every year. I'm in SEC country, and I watched those type of games from him too often, and I've also watched him lose more big games than he won. He has a losing record against winning teams, against winning programs, and that's one stigma that I know about him. And I'm not giving up on him, but I feel like he shows favoritism. There's no reason why Malik Rozier should be playing quarterback. No disrespect to the young man. If I'm going to lose, I'd rather lose with a freshman that has the opportunity to grow than a fifth-year senior, that his career is basically over with. Unless he has a miraculous turnaround, he's not going to go to the NFL. And it's a lot of infighting in the team from some of the interviews I've seen. So a change has to be made. In my opinion, Coach Rick has to become a better leader. He really does have to become a better leader. And the offensive coaches have to get it together, because I don't blame the defense for what happened in that game. I kept hearing a lot of people comment, well, he got a lot of pressure on him. Yeah, he got a lot of pressure on him in the second half when they were up by 17 points, because now they know we have to throw the ball. So they threw every blitz they could at us. We have 5 offensive linemen, and they're sending 6, 7 people. You can't block everybody. So they blitzed us and they got to them. But the reason why it happened was because we couldn't move the ball. Yeah.
So being a head coach, there's a number of facets to it, running the entire program. So we could talk forever about what a head coach needs to be responsible for, and looking at the top coaches in the country, what they do well and what they may need to improve on. And some are more hands-on, and some are more CEO, and they build a family of coaches that they trust, and then become longtime assistants and that sort of thing. But when it comes to game day, and preparing your team for game day, there's been generally 2 buckets of approach here, and one is the psychology of the game. Can you prepare your team to be focused, laser focused, confident, poised, not to make mistakes, and just play all out, play free, play loose, but play fundamentally sound and disciplined, but play loose and not to lose and to play free. And then also, can you and your staff game plan and out game plan the other coaching staff? That's how I see the preparation for a game. And I got to say, we got out coached on both accounts.
I've seen, and this is third year at Miami, and I've only seen 2 games where he had his team totally prepared, and they dominated those 2 games, and that was Virginia Tech and Notre Dame. You know, besides that, I have not seen a game where he has had the team. I've seen games where Manny Diaz has had the defense locked in and prepared, but I've seen games where the offense has just never happened. And like I say, people get mad at me, but I put the onus on the guy who gets paid. And you made a point of more. You have CEOs and you have people that's more hands-on. Typically, when you run a program, whether it's a football program or a company, if you have your president of the company hands-on everything, typically that company doesn't make it, because now you become a dictatorship and everything has to be your way. So you decide not to listen to other people, and it breeds contentment and things don't tend to work. You have to surround yourself around people you trust and people that know how to do their job, not just the job that you want them to do. And that's how you succeed. As much as Nick Saban didn't like Lane Kiffin, he trusted him with his offense. You would see them argue on the sideline, but he trusted him with his offense, and he got a national championship out of it. You understand what I'm saying? For some reason, Rick doesn't trust anybody. And don't get me started about John. Quarterbacks haven't gotten better at all. Actually, they've decreased. And we have a young guy who's the same age as the quarterbacks that are playing on the team now, who really has no experience. This is his first time coaching experience at all. And he's coaching one of the most important positions in football, which is quarterback coach. And he doesn't know what he's doing. And it's not me being negative, it's me just speaking facts. You can't put someone that young with zero experience at a great school like the University of Miami and expect to succeed. That doesn't. I can't remember the last time that happened at any school. It's definitely not going to happen at Miami. You know, it's tough, and we could win 102-0 tonight, and I would be happy. Believe me, but I won't be impressed because it's Savannah State. You know, that whooping last week really put things in perspective for me, and I'm to the point now. If we have to take the rest of the season how it is, but if he continues to decide to call plays and continues to use Malik Rozier as quarterback, and we continue to falter the way we have on offense the past couple of years, it's going to be time for an offensive coaching change.
So I want to hit on 2 things you hit on, the quarterback situation and then also the outlook for the rest of the season. So the quarterback situation, what I found odd was that we all expected, okay, Rocher, trying to get his name pronunciation right based on everything I heard before the game last week, Rocher played awful the last 4 games of last season. And even before that, he was helped out by playmakers against inferior teams most of the time. Yeah, not that the guy didn't throw a good pass the whole season, but he was underwhelming. There was no question about that. 45% more interceptions than TDs the last 4 games. Just bad.
That's horrible.
2 studs come into the program. One has an extra year on the other. So we're talking about N'Kosi Perry and Jaron Williams. And most people thought that Perry would be the next in line. So we thought legitimately there is a quarterback battle starting once the season ends. Bam. Wisconsin wins. The Orange Bowl's over. There's a quarterback battle. These guys are battling it out. We're going into spring. And quickly into spring practice, Mark Richt says, Rocher's the starter. And that's it.
That annoyed me. It annoyed me. That's the selfishness, and that's the I'm trying to figure out the word to say, but That's a very arrogant statement by Mark Richt. And that's why we got beat the way we got beat, is because of his arrogance sometimes. He can build a program. He built Georgia. He's doing great things at Miami when it comes to facilities and getting donations and everything
Recruiting.
like that. But one thing I say about recruiting is Miami recruits itself. We're in the greatest football area in the world. You could come here and coach at Miami and recruit well. You know what I'm saying? Seriously,
This is true. You got him in your backyard.
Al Golden recruited well.
But it has been better. He has brought in better recruits.
Oh,
His
yeah,
recruiting classes are ranked higher than what they were before.
Yeah, but there are situations behind that. Before we were on probation, you know, we got off probation his first year there. You know, so those things happen when you're limited scholarships, and you have FSU and Florida and Alabama saying don't go to Miami because they're going to get the death penalty. You know, so Al Golden had his hands tied, and I'm not an Al Golden fan, but I try to look at the whole picture. If you don't have any sanctions against you anymore, now you got new facilities coming in and all that, and you're Mark Richt, you have a name, of course you're going to recruit better than a guy who came from Temple facing a death penalty. You know,
Absolutely.
I mean, so those things really matter. And still Al Golden, look how many NFL players that Al Golden put in. You know, so it's not like we didn't have talent. And I keep saying it, the problem with Al Golden was the defense. When Mark Richt took over, everybody thought that the offense was going to have to carry the defense. And for the first 2 years, the defense has had to carry the offense. The offense has just gotten terrible. And if you look at the second half of last week, second half of the game, why did he wait all the way to the fourth quarter to go to the spread when I've been screaming, go to the spread from the first quarter? He goes to the spread, the end of the game, and we scored 2 touchdowns back to back. Why? But the first 2 plays of the game, he runs the ball right up the middle. You know, it's like, what are you doing? Why? What are you? I'll tell you this here. Malik Rozier, I don't know if he's as bad or Mark Richt's as bad. And the reason why I say this, if you watch that game against Duke when Al Golden got fired and what's name was the interim coach,
yep,
Malik Rozier came out there and destroyed Duke. I mean, he was like 8 for 8 or 9 for 9, and all the passes was deep down the middle of the field. We got Brevin Jordan at tight end. We have probably the best wide receiver group in the country. And we can't complete passes. We don't throw the ball to tight ends. We don't use the middle of the seam of the field. We don't use swing routes. We don't use quick slants. We just don't use any. It's either go deep or tuck the ball and run. It's like we run 4 plays every game, and we're very predictable, and it's monotonous. And I don't want to sound like a Debbie Downer. But he gets paid over $4 million a year. I expect more out of a guy who gets paid over $4 million a year. I'm a religious guy. I'm a Christian, but I don't need a youth pastor as my coach. I need a coach that can be a youth pastor. I'm just being honest.
That's absolutely right. The guy, for as much as we want to, when there's situations like what we saw at Ohio State earlier, and some situations like that, obviously. We expect some moral integrity out of these coaches, but let's be real. Otherwise, if they were just another faculty member on campus, then they'd make their $80,000 a year and they'd teach class, and that would be football class. But that's not the deal. They make $4 and $5 and $6 million a year, the high level coaches. And even if you go to like Oregon State, I was shocked when their coach left a couple of years ago and they had to pay out his contract. He was making $3.5 million at Oregon State. So all these guys make a ton of money to win football games. That is their first job requirement. Otherwise, they're another teacher on campus making $80,000 a year, and that would be fine, but that's not the deal. There's too much money coming in.
And Miami fans are so fickle. We are the most fickle fans in the world. If we win, we go to games. If we lose, we don't. So it is definitely on the pressure on the coach to get the job done. And like I say, and I've told people, if he don't win this year, I remember I told you this at the last interview of last year, people are going to be calling for his head, and people tell me, no, we love him. after last week, people were calling for his head. And the reason why I say these things is I say them early because I don't want to be that guy that sit here and say, everything's going to be good, everything's going to be good, and it's not going to be good. I'll give you the opportunity. It's up to you. It's up to you to prove that you can do the job. I'm not getting paid that money. You're getting paid that money. But with me being a season ticket holder and everything like that, hold on one second, Mark. Let me grab something.
Sure.
1 second.
So what I'm going to say here while Zoe's taking care of something is that I think the narrative would be a little bit different based on a few things here. First of all, we'll find out how good LSU is after they play some other good teams and play out their schedule. We'll find out how good they are. But coming into this, people thought LSU was going to have one of its worst teams in 15 or 20 years. They had their lowest preseason rank since 2000. So the expectation was that LSU is really talented, but they're not going to be a really good team. They've got a first-year quarterback who's never started against anybody, running backs that have never played, wide receivers who have never played. They're fortified on the defense. They're strong there. The offensive line's good. But that LSU, man, they're an unknown commodity. So that's number one. It's not like they were playing an LSU team that was considered, oh, this is a top 5 team in the country. That's number one. Number two, it would have been very disappointing, I'm sure, for Canes fans if they would have lost that game on a last-second field goal. It would have been like, oh, we couldn't get the job done. Big state. But when you go in against a team that's not supposed to be great and you get annihilated, it's 33-3 in the third quarter, and you look completely unprepared and overmatched, then that's really an issue with the preparation.
Especially when the talent level this is no disrespect to LSU. They are nowhere near as talented as us. I'm just being out there, nowhere near as talented as us. And not just that, we lost to Coach Ed Orgeron. When you get out-coached by Ed Orgeron, when you are Mark Richt and you get out-coached by Ed Orgeron, that has to be the lowest of the low. I can guarantee you, I will willing to bet anything that Dabo Swinney will not get out-coached by Ed Orgeron. It won't happen. You know what I'm saying? That won't happen. It just won't. He will not. You had 8 months to prepare for this game. It's not like this was a game that just came on the schedule. You had 8 months to prepare for this game. And we have like 4, 6, 5 receivers. You know what I'm saying? We have speed all over the field. There is no reason why. And then the special teams. We haven't been able to kick the ball in 2 years. I mean, it's unbelievable how unprepared we are. And when you are an unprepared football program, that is all coaching. That is all coaching. That has nothing to do with players. When players are unprepared, that means the coaches did not prepare them. That's just facts. We have to get these guys prepared. They have to be ready to play football. They have to get an attitude. The one thing one of the reasons why I didn't want Rick as our coach is because he's too much of a nice guy. He doesn't have an attitude. He doesn't. There's nothing wrong with being nice. Like I said, be a youth pastor. But I want a guy like a Mike Leach who cares about killing other teams. A guy like Art Browse who says who called out Nick Saban and said basically, I want to whoop your ass. I don't think you can stop me. I want a guy like that with confidence and arrogance to say, I'm going at you. Not, we'll see. Nah, I want that confidence. I'm going to get off in a second because I got a few things I'll do. But I heard one thing, and I'm not sure it's true or not. I'm not 100%, so I'm just throwing this is just speculation. And I know he got hurt, but Amon Richards got hurt a little bit. But I heard that he got pulled out of the game because he went off on Malik Rozier for throwing bad passes. And I think he hurt his knee because he had to overstretch for a ball that Malik threw. And he hurt himself and he went off on Malik, and you put him out of the game instead of going off on Malik. I haven't seen Mark Richt chastise Malik Rozier on the sideline one time since he's been coaching there. And that's just not That's not being a coach. That's being a friend. That's not being a coach. When I'm wrong, you've told me I was wrong on this show. That's why I consider you a friend. I'm not always right. But if I'm always right, you're not my friend. If you tell me I'm always right, then you're not my friend. You're setting me up for failure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I just want to finish one point I started to make and wanted to get your feedback on, and I know you need to take off, is that it was just strange to me that you got a quarterback who, as you mentioned right out of the gate, most likely it's happened, but we've got about a 95% certainty that a quarterback who played 13 games last year and played a game before that, so he's got about 15 or 16 games under his belt. He's not, and he's been on campus for 3 to 4 years. He's not going to be any better. No. So most likely that's the case. But even if he would have improved through the spring, through summer individual workouts, through fall camp in August, and then you would have said Malik Roger's gotten so much better. He won the starting quarterback job, and that would have been announced sometime in August, that based on everything he did in the offseason, he's better. Then I could have trusted that until I saw him on the field. But to name him the starter right out of the gate, I'm thinking, well, we know he hasn't gotten better because he hasn't even played any football against anybody, and Rick's naming him the starter. So either there's just some ridiculous relationship going on there that he's so loyal to Malik Roger that makes no sense. And number two, there's got to be something going on with N'Kosi Perry that he's going to trust him to throw him in the battle.
I don't know what it is, but we hear this N'Kosi Perry and then Jaron Williams back and forth, and I'm for the N'Kosi Perry. And people make it seem, and this is no disrespect to Jaron Williams, but I watched N'Kosi at the spring game and I watched Jaron the spring game, and they both played great, but N'Kosi played better. And people make it seem like Jaron Williams fans that really want to see him play. Jaron Williams' main offer was from Kentucky. That was who he was going to go to if he didn't go to Miami. So if he was as great as people think he was, his main offer would not have been Kentucky. You know, that's just what I'm throwing out there. So sure. Watch on the field. N'Kosi played football down here in Miami. He played football down here. No disrespect to Georgia football. Georgia football is not Miami football. It's a totally different animal. It's a totally different beast. These kids down here bleed this. This is what they do. Their Pop Warner games have 10,000 people at them. They bleed this, you know, and I would take South Florida football play. If you gave, even with the offensive lines aren't big out here. If you gave me a 52-man roster of everybody from South Florida, and you can pick every other state in the country, and the only states that I would be a little concerned about, the first state I'd be a little concerned about is Georgia. The only other state, and I keep saying this, people get mad at me, would be Ohio. Because the state of Ohio, they bleed football and they bleed track. And all you got to do is look at the history of their track and field teams and look at the history of their football. So besides that, Texas, I'm not afraid of. They're soft. They've always been soft. Fast players who are soft. But Miami, it's not even the state of Florida. It's the state of Miami. Lauderdale, Broward, Dade County, these are the best football players in the world. So there's no reason why we should, you know, lose games the way we do. But I'm gonna get up off of here because
all right,
so I got to do, man. I do predict that
stopping by, man.
I do predict a butt kicking tonight, though. We're gonna definitely kick butt against a high school team. We're gonna whoop them.
Yeah, I would think so. I think it's pretty safe this week.
I'm gonna do a live show after the game is over for about 45 minutes to an hour, and if you're available, I'm gonna give you a call, and then I'll come on with you if you're available to at least give you the insight, or we'll do something tomorrow before I leave Miami.
All right, yeah, give me a call so everybody hear that. Zoe's going to be on his channel right after the Miami game. So as soon as the game's over, within a few minutes, Zoe's going to be on his channel doing a live stream. So join him right there.
I appreciate it. I think I've got the subscribers jumped up immediately last week, and I think that had a lot to do with you, so I definitely appreciate it. And 19 Savage is getting his chain. Is on the way. We had to get one made because we didn't have any Texas chains, so he had to get one made. So it's on the way.
All right, 19 Savage, getting the job done for both of
I
us.
just noticed something different about you, though.
What's that?
What is this in the background?
We got a
It's
few
not just
helmets
a
back.
white wall anymore.
What's that? No.
It's not just a white wall anymore.
We moved around. We painted the walls. We
No, just look at the helmets and stuff. And you got helmets and
got a
that's
few
what I'm
helmets
talking.
back there.
You're missing one though.
Oh yeah, I know it. I know it. We'll see what happened here was, if you notice, I got 6, so 4 of them are the teams that made the college football playoffs 2 years ago, because that I was going to build a set and collect helmets. So I thought, well, with the college football playoff teams, I'll start there. And then the other 2 are Tennessee and Ole Miss. And the only reason I have those 2 is because they had a little bit of a swag sale at ESPN a few weeks ago, and they were the only 2 helmets, and they were cheap, so I just picked them up.
Well, I'm gonna make sure I send you a Miami one, and you got to get your Ohio State one up there. I'm gonna send you a Miami one. So
Ohio
this
State
one
right there.
Okay, yeah, right here. Okay, so this one can be moved to the side, and my Miami one can be put right here. Matter of fact, yeah, this one can be moved. The Tennessee one can be moved to the side.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna get some of the major players in here: Miami,
Yep.
Notre Dame, USC, Texas, etc.
All right, Mark, I appreciate it, my brother.
All right, so have a good time, man.
You too, bro. Thanks.
Talk to you later.
All right.
So yeah, join Zoe right after the game. So right after Miami plays Savannah State, game's in the books. You jump online and you check out his channel. He'll have a live stream with analysis there. So I was in the process of running through the schedule for today.
I'm not in there.
The TV schedule, and letting you know what I'm going to be watching. So anybody who's watching this after the fact, of course, this is going to post after we're done here. So if you're catching me about halfway through, you can obviously see what you missed. All you have to do is wait a couple minutes after the show's over, and this will process and post. And we will wrap it up here in the next half hour. Want to leave myself and you some time to get prepared for the big noon kickoff. So we left this at 7 o'clock tonight, 7 o'clock Eastern, Clemson, Texas A&M kickoff. I will be locked into Iowa State in particular, and possibly the ending of Georgia, South Carolina, if that's close. But then, of course, Texas A&M, Clemson, that's a marquee matchup. May not be a close game for 60 minutes, but a marquee matchup that has to be on my radar. Then at 7:30, I don't have the SEC network, so I will not watch Kentucky and Florida. Of course, I'll be checking the scores. We've got Indiana, Virginia on the Big Ten network, and so maybe these are some options if Texas A&M and Clemson gets out of hand early. But I'll be watching those games. And then, of course, at 8 o'clock, Penn State and Pitt would be secondary for me to Texas A&M Clemson if it's close. But Penn State and Pitt is going to be on a screen here at 8 o'clock on ABC. Then throughout the night, is there anything else? Oh, obviously, 8:30. I can't imagine that the number one game doesn't become, for me, USC and Stanford at 8:30 on Fox. And then later that night, Cal BYU might be something to watch. And certainly, once it hits 10:45, and most likely there's going to be some drama either with Pitt Penn State or USC Stanford. So I'm going to watch the conclusion of those games. And then we've got Michigan State, Arizona State at 10:45. So that game's not going to be over until after 2 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. But depending on circumstances, I may do a live stream after Michigan State, Arizona State, near the end of the day, middle of the night, and we'll conclude it there. So we are going to be back throughout the day, after the noon games, the 3:30 games, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock games, and possibly after Michigan State, Arizona State, if it's worth talking about at that point. So instant analysis throughout the day. And I will play off the comment that was made just a few minutes ago by our guy, Gable Kane. Hopefully I got that right. If I screwed that up, I apologize. Gables Kane, who had a great endorsement for our live streams throughout the day with our instant analysis all day Saturday. Chris Kim, I have yet to see you post to Mark Rogers TV, so you're making a comment today. Welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Would love to know who you root for and how long you've been watching. All right. Chris Kim, if a conference championship game doesn't mean much for the committee, what's the purpose of a conference championship game? Bernard Baker, first time to Mark Rogers TV and commenting on the live chat. Bernard, welcome to Mark Rogers TV. Drevley, have yet to see you on Mark Rogers TV. This is the voice of college football. Please check out the videos. We bring on the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the industry to talk college football each and every day, and analysis from myself as well. So we are the voice of college football. You will not be disappointed if you love the discussion, the debate, the analysis of college football. Rankings, ratings, predictions, previews, instant analysis. We've got it all right here. Orsinis Orca 78. Good to see you. Dennis Wilson as well. Again, Drevley looking for Nkosi Perry sighting today. William Lee, good to see you. Anybody else in the chat? Green Man joining us today. Zoom play in NCIS Fanatic 21, getting into it about Ohio State and TCU. And there's a bit of hyperbole on both sides, especially from what I've seen on the side of Zoom play concerning the talent level at TCU. Gary Patterson is one of the very best coaches in the country, probably in the top 5 to 8. Exceptional coach. He has built a program based on speed and finding diamonds in the rough. TCU is really good, really fast, talented. They are playing a different level opponent next week. We'll see. I will make a prediction. Of course, we will preview the game and discuss it all week. TCU, Ohio State. Just keep in mind, you're not playing SMU. You're not even playing a number of teams that you play in the Pac-12. And Ohio State, the same thing. This is not Oregon State. This is not Rutgers. It's going to be most likely a really good game. Who has the most talent? Well, there's no question Ohio State has a better roster than TCU. We can talk all we want about players in space and speed, and Turpin's great, and Rieger's really good. I understand that. But top to bottom, it's like how many times did we come across? It was twice. Oregon, Ohio State in the 2010 Rose Bowl and the 2014 National Championship game. And I had to listen for 6 weeks about how Oregon was too fast and too speedy and all this other business for Ohio State. And that was a joke, because if you looked at the rosters and would tell me at any time during that period, okay, look at an Oregon roster, look at an Ohio State roster, how many of these players on each roster are going to be playing in the NFL in 5 years? It's not even close. And the same thing with TCU and Ohio State. That doesn't mean TCU can't beat Ohio State. Iowa beat Ohio State last year. Certainly it can happen, but there's no legitimate comparison of the two rosters top to bottom. Out of that TCU roster that will come to play in Dallas next week, 100-man roster, what do they have, about 15 NFL players? And maybe Ohio State has 35 or 40. So that's all I'm saying. You can't compare the rosters in one game based on coaching, readiness, the functionality of the offense and defense, the schemes, the techniques, everything involved. Yes, better teams lose, more talented teams. I'm not saying Ohio State's better. I don't know if they're better. Time will tell. We'll know in the next week, and especially the next 6 weeks, if they're better than TCU. I've got to think at this point that they are. All right. What do we got? What do we got? But it'll be funny to watch you guys get after it next week after the game. So just with all the trash talking between Zoom Play and NCIS Fanatic 21, I will ask the same thing that I asked at the entire offseason when I heard the back and forth between the LSU fans and the Miami fans. Just show up after the game. Just show up after the game, regardless of the result. Be ready and willing and ready to stomp somebody down if your team wins, but also be ready to take a beating and show up if your team loses, if you're talking trash. Great slate of games today. Yeah, we're marching them down, Orsenis Orca. I don't know if you caught us earlier, but I was going through what my TV schedule looks like. And again, I will go back and I completed the run. So it's basically Mississippi State, Kansas State for me at noon, with an eye on Duke Northwestern, Arizona, Houston, and Georgia Tech, South Florida. Then at 1 o'clock, Oklahoma, UCLA comes on my radar, but I'm watching the other games. And then we'll see what happens if the Bruins can pull off a stunner and just stay in the game. Then at 3:30, all my attention goes to Georgia, South Carolina, first and foremost, with Nebraska and Colorado secondary, and Ohio State Rutgers, just because they're one of the best teams in the country. But it's basically going to be Georgia, South Carolina, and Nebraska, Colorado at 3:30. Then, boom, at 5 o'clock, Iowa State jumps onto the radar with, of course, the other games in play. And I'm going to watch the best games. I'm going to watch the closest games in the fourth quarter. But Iowa State at 5 o'clock really means something for me. I like that game. And then at 7 o'clock, Clemson, Texas A&M hit the field. But of course, if Iowa State's close, I'm watching that. And there were a few other games in there. But then at 8 o'clock, Pitt and Penn State probably takes a secondary viewing for me to Texas A&M, Clemson, depending again on how close the games are. 8:30, Stanford, USC will be number one. And the other two will be periphery again, unless something gets out of hand. And then we've got a few other West Coast games that have marginal significance. But then, bam, Michigan State, Arizona State, precedence right there for me to watch that game. I'd like to remind everyone that we do have the phone line on. 860-325-3687. And we'll take calls for the next few minutes. 860-325-3687. The number goes in the chat. There it is. All right, so we've got previews on Georgia, South Carolina, USC, Stanford, Kentucky, Florida. I wanted to ask Zoe about his adjusted thoughts on the Coastal Division. Much of the talk on my channel has been about the ACC championship game all offseason, the Clemson-Miami rematch. After watching Virginia Tech dismantle Florida State and watching Miami struggle mightily against LSU, we need to rethink the Coastal. And most of these teams will not be in ACC play for the next few weeks. Virginia Tech has 3 layups the next 3 weeks and then go to Duke. That will be interesting. Miami, of course, has Florida State coming up soon. Florida State plays Syracuse next week. And so the Coastal Division now suddenly becomes interesting in that Miami has yet to play a conference game, of course, but based on what they played and showed us on the field in Dallas last week, we've got to rethink the Coastal. I'm not saying Virginia Tech is now the front runner. I'm just saying they have a hurdle past them in the ACC, and they defeated that hurdle somewhat easily and surprisingly in that one. 860-325-3687. Otherwise, I may get off the line and have some time to get something to eat and do a few chores before we hit noon in all the big games. And I will see you guys later today Again, we will have instant analysis after most of the big games throughout the day. So I'm going to try to hit those gaps between the noon and the 3:30 game, 3:30, 7 o'clock game, after the primetime games, and maybe if I can still get off the couch at that point after Michigan State, Arizona State, which is going to be about a 10:45 kickoff, 3.5-hour game, is going to be about 2:15 in the morning Eastern time. But maybe we'll have to say something on Michigan State, Arizona State, as the Big Ten tries to not have a letdown this week. And the possible pitfall for the Big Ten would be that game in particular, and also Penn State playing on the road at Pitt at Heinz Field. And the other one could be Nebraska hosting Colorado after the Buffs showed us something against CSU last week. So the three, and then there's, of course, Iowa, Iowa State. So 4 games that the Big Ten needs to show up this week would be, again, Penn State going to Pitt, Iowa hosting Iowa State, Nebraska hosting Colorado, and the other game, Michigan State going out west to take on Arizona State. So the Big Ten is not facing any huge opponents this week, as they will be next week with TCU, or they did last week with Notre Dame, but they need to win those games, or the perception of the Big Ten will change mightily, especially if Penn State loses, and to a lesser degree, Michigan State. But if Michigan State and Penn State go down, or one of them goes down, then that does not look good for what many people considered to be the best conference in America the entire off season. So there's already a loss out of one of the big teams in the Big Ten, in Michigan losing to Notre Dame and not looking good. It not being an extremely close game. Notre Dame was the better team most of that game. Michigan did make it close at the end and came within 1 score. Michigan State is deeper, but Arizona State has the best 3 or 4 players on the field. You would think with at least N'Keal Harry in particular. Arizona State's going to win, according to Jamie. I am selecting Michigan State to win the game, Arizona State to cover the 6. Check out my prediction video. 12-7 against the spread last week, 19-4 overall. And here are the predictions right here. I predicted 26 games. I went beyond the top 25, and I took on Duke, Northwestern, Georgia Tech, South Florida, Arizona, Houston, Iowa, Iowa State, Kentucky, and Florida. I went beyond the top 25 games. I think Florida's ranked 25th, but I went beyond the top 25 games to also pull in some other relevant games. All right, one last shot at the call-in. The phone number is 860-325-3687. Yes, in the future, I will have that posted graphically, but it's 860-325-3687 if anybody wants to call. Otherwise, appreciate you guys jumping on the line and stirring up the live chat during the big show, the kickoff. And this show will get even better in future weeks as we basically set you up for the games on Saturday. And so always, whether it's the newsletter, whether it's the live streams, whether it's the videos from day to day, the daily grind, whether it's this particular show, the kickoff show on Saturday morning, I would like your suggestions on how it can be better. Subscribe to the newsletter. If there's anybody online right now watching me right this second or watching the replay, and if you have yet to subscribe to the newsletter, we will not clutter your inbox. It will be 1 mailing per week, maybe 2 in the postseason, possibly once we hit bowl season, but it's going to be 1 per week. And I believe if you talk to any of the people that subscribe to the newsletter right now, the Voice of College Football, that we got some extremely positive feedback on our first edition last week. So subscribe to the newsletter. Send your email address to MarkRogersTV@gmail.com. MarkRogersTV@gmail.com. And again, like the videos. Please comment, whether that's debating with me or supporting me or telling me I'm an idiot or making a suggestion on content or guests that I should have on or whatever it is that you have to say. I want to hear from you. You've got your voice. We are the voice of college football. Your voice, my voice, the voice of the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the industry as well. We will see you in a few hours with analysis of the early games. Appreciate the support. Subscribe to the newsletter. Subscribe to the channel. Let's drive Mark Rogers TV to a better place. See you soon. Enjoy the football games.